Hey guys, it's Jared here on Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What do you have for today, guys? Is the next installment of my top 10 albums of each year. We're up to 1988, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you wanted to check out my videos from the previous years, definitely check out my playlist. From 1970 to 79, I had my top 5, and then when I got into starting in 1980, I bumped it up to top 10, and I'm continuing my journey through each year until I reach the current year of 2022, which obviously I'll do at the end of the year. And 1988 was definitely one of the strongest years in metal in my opinion. Some killer albums. Obviously 80s was dominated by thrash primarily, and then once death metal came in at the end of the decade. But I'm a diehard thrash head, so the majority of my list is thrash. About 8 out of 10 albums on my list are thrash. So I'm not going to waste too much time on each album. I'm just going to kind of go through them, maybe list a couple tracks that I enjoy from each album. And before I list my number one, I'll give my honorable mentions. And if you're, again, new to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button down below. Join the Metal Music Meltdown family. And stay tuned for 1989, which I'll be coming up in the next week or so. I try to release one of these pretty much every week, a week to two, depending on how my schedule goes. So stay tuned for 1989 as well. So let's jump right in, guys. At number 10, I have Punishment for Decadence by the band Coroner. I love this band out of Sweden. This is their second album. This is probably my favorite album from theirs. And in terms of a couple songs, Absorbed, Mass Jackal, and Sudden Fall, I would say, was the three songs that stand out. At number 9, I have Arizona Thrashers, Atrophy, with their debut, Socialized Hate. These guys only put out 2 albums, and then they kind of fell off the map. Really good albums, though. They're a solid band. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure the backstory, but I just wish they would have put out more material. But this debut is an all-time classic with songs like Chemical Dependency, Preacher Preacher, and Matter of Attitude would be another good one. Just a really good album. I love it. Number 8, I have another debut album from the band Vio-lence. Fucking love this album. All-time classic, a must-have in any collection. With the title track Eternal Nightmare, Serial Killer, and Kill on Command, I'd say, is a really good one as well. But just a balls-out thrash album in your face. Really cool artwork, and a must-have for any metalhead. And at number 7, I have the Mighty Slayer with South of Heaven. Definitely a different sounding album from Slayer, but it's still fucking Slayer. It still kills. With the title track, Mandatory Suicide, and Silent Scream. I'd say the best one. Ghost of War is really good too. But I love this album. Always love their artwork. Reminds me of their music. Like, it's perfectly matched with their music. And it's a killer album still. And at number 6, I have Canadian Thrashers Razor with their album Violent Restitution. This is probably my favorite Razor album. If you're not familiar with the Canadian Thrashers, definitely check these guys out. Killer thrash, like they just as good as their American counterparts, with great tracks such as The Martial Arts, Hypertension, and Behind Bars. Just a really good album. Again, an all-time classic thrash album, and definitely a must-have. At number 5? Number 5, I have Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. In my opinion, this is the last really great Maiden record. The first 7 are iconic and masterpieces. The other ones are good too, but this is the cutoff point for me where they went from greatness to good. Brave New World was solid. Some of the new releases are decent. Senjutsu was okay, was pretty good, and Book of Souls was not bad. But yeah, they had some. The releases are still solid, but in my opinion, the first 7 albums are where they made their mark. And with Infinite Dreams, Can I Play with Madness, and The Evil That Men Do, but solid songs all the way through this album. Really good stuff, and one of my favorite album covers into the Maiden collection. I love the color scheme and just the imaging. It's just a beautiful cover. At number 4, I have another debut from the band Forbidden Evil. Again, an iconic album. Definitely one of the best thrash debuts of all time. A very iconic album cover, very recognizable. And with songs like Chalice of Blood, Through Eyes of Glass, and March into Fire. Just some really good stuff on this album. Like I said, one of my favorite debut thrash albums of all time, and definitely a must-have. Their second album was really good as well, but definitely check these guys out. Really good stuff. At number 3, I have the only death metal album on my list, the band Death with Leprosy. One of my favorite album covers of all time. I love the imaging, I love the colors, and one of my favorite death albums by the band Death, and just death metal albums in general. And like I mentioned in the previous video, I guarantee every Death album will make my list each year they come out. It's my favorite death metal band of all time, and this album is probably my top 3 of theirs for sure. With songs like the title track Leprosy, Left to Die, and Born Dead. Just some really good stuff on this album. Not quite as raw as Scream Bloody Gore. It's a little bit more refined. I think that's why I like it a little bit more. But it still has the balls out death metal, and it's in your face. And killer album. Number 1 and 2, I kind of hemmed and hawed a while what to put where, but I decided to put Metallica's And Justice for All at number 2. If you asked me in the past, this would have easily been my number 1. Back in the day when I first started getting into metal, Metallica was literally the only thing I listened to. I was obsessed. The first 5 albums I listened to obsessively. I knew every lyric, every riff, every guitar solo, and I drove my brother crazy listening to them on every day. But as I expanded they were my kind of my gateway into heavier music. I discovered Slayer, Testament, Exodus, and kind of expanded my listening. And I still love Metallica. They always have a spot in my heart because they got me into metal, and these albums are so classic and some of the greatest metal albums of all time. But over time, I got into other bands a little bit more, and with the Metallica, obviously, their quality of their albums kind of declining after the Black Album. I didn't really follow them as much. I still buy all their stuff because I love the band, I support them. But yeah, their early stuff is where it's at. With Blackened and Justice for All, the one is one of my favorite Metallica songs of all time. Harvester of Sorrow, The Shortest Straw, just killer album top to bottom, and a must-have for sure, killer stuff. And for some quick honorable mentions, some albums that might be surprised didn't make my list for some people. Some off the top of my head: Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime was a monster album this year that didn't make my list. It's just not my thing, guys. I'm more of a thrash head. I like death metal more aggressive music. Queensryche is a beautiful album. This is a really good album, but like I said, it's just not my taste, and it didn't make my list. Another big one was King Diamond, Them. I love King Diamond, but it's one of those bands because of his vocals. I like his falsetto voice, but I can't listen to it for an extended period of time. I can listen to one King Diamond album, then I have to switch it to something else. But still, Them is a killer album. Definitely deserves to be mentioned here. AC/DC had Blow Up Your Video this year, which was great. Anthrax had State of Euphoria. What else? Flotsam and Jetsam had No Place for Disgrace. That's another one that didn't quite make my list. We had also Bolt Thrower had In Battle There Is No Law. That's a great album. And there was also Death Angel, Frolic Through the Park. Really good album from those guys as well. Very underrated band, but didn't quite make my list. Good stuff as well. Ozzy had No Rest for the Wicked. Decent stuff. Overkill had Under the Influence. Overkill always puts out solid stuff. Another great thrash album, Nuclear Assault, had Survive. What else here, guys? Manowar had Kings of Metal. Really good album from them too. Good stuff. Crocus had Heart Attack that year. Judas Priest had Rammed It Down. Have to mention Priest in the conversation. Not one of my favorite Priest albums. Oh, Megadeth had So Far So Good So What. It's another band, another album that didn't quite make my list. It's a solid album from them, but there's some really good debuts from lesser known bands I really enjoyed from this year a little bit more. And yeah, I guess that's good enough for my honorable mentions, guys. And for number one, I had to put Testament's New Order. One of my favorite Testament albums of all time. It's just a great album. Has some real bangers in it, like Disciples of the Watch, Into the Pit, and the title track. Just some really good live tracks. Still staples in their live set still. Testament has become my favorite thrash band of all time. One of the most consistent bands through their whole discography, along with Overkill, I'd say. And they're my favorite discography in any thrash band of all time, including Metallica, Megadeth, etc. Just killer band. They should have easily been in the top 4. They kicked the shit out of Anthrax. I don't care what anyone says. You know, Anthrax might have sold more or may have been influential in a certain way, but in terms of quality, I put Testament over really any of those bands in the top 4 at this point. In my opinion, they're just amazing. Killer lineup. In my opinion, the best lineup in metal right now: Chuck Billy, Eric Peterson, Alex Skolnick, and they did have Gene Hoglan, which is a killer on drums. And who else could replace Hoglan than Dave Lombardo? So again, they still have that all-star lineup, and I'm dying for new material from these guys. Even their new latest releases are all killer. Titans of Creation was a killer album, better than anything Metallica or like Megadeth put out in years. But anyways, guys, that's my top 10. Please list below what your top 10 would be from 1988. If there's any albums I forgot to mention or some bands I should check out, definitely list them down below as well. And stay tuned for 1989. Like I said, in the next week or two, I usually put them out every week or two, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, keep it metal.